The revolution is real, it's live, and as some comrades say, it's lit, right? lit. Real, live, lit. Right? The revolution is lit.
They're gaining a new political consciousness. 2 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You can keep Johnson in Washington, D.C., or you can send him back to his Texas cotton patch. The one who sent Kennedy to Washington. You're the one who put the present Democratic administration in Washington, D.C. The whites were evenly divided. It was the fact that you threw 80% of your votes behind the Democrats that put the Democrats in the White House. When you see this, you can see that the Negro vote is the key factor. And despite the fact that you are in a position to be the determining factor, what do you get out of it? The Democrats have been in Washington, D.C. only because of the Negro vote. They've been down there 4 years. And all other legislation they wanted to bring up, they brought it up and gotten it out of the way, and now they bring up you. And now they bring up you. You put them first and they put you last, because you're a chump. The party that you backed controls 2/3 of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and still they can't keep their promise to you. Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Guru comrades, and welcome back to the Omali Taught Me Study live with the leader of the African nation, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. My name is Akile Anai, the Director of Agitation and Propaganda for the African People's Socialist Party, as well as your MC. And today's episode is themed The Black Vote and the Crisis of U.S. Elections. That clip we just watched was excerpted from a longer presentation given by Malcolm X, famously known as the ballot or the bullet, which was given on April 3rd of 1964. It is undeniable that this system is experiencing a profound crisis, and the 2024 elections is a glaring example of this. It's unlike any election in U.S. history, occurring in a very politically turbulent period, impacted by the struggles of African and colonized people, including the Palestinian freedom struggle. There is no business as usual with these elections, where the Democratic Party simply relies on fear tactics to win the African vote without having to put forward or support an agenda that speaks to the interests of our people. Our movement has and continues to disrupt this process. Next weekend, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations will conduct its 8th annual Electoral Campaign School, which trains African workers, women, and youth to take to the electoral arena to advance the struggle for Black power by putting our issues on the agenda. This school, themed the ballot and the bullet, this time till it's won, instructs those wanting to run for office and how to fight for issues such as reparations, freeing political prisoners, ending gentrification and the negative policy of police containment, and so much more. This year, the school also raises up the important case of the Uhuru Three, which threatens the future of free speech with the attempt to imprison Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville on bogus foreign agent charges. This case also represents this system's dilemma in attempting to portray itself as the beacon of democracy while simultaneously threatening the First Amendment. With this study, we will discuss the significance of this period and the U.S. elections, the importance of your attendance at the Black is Back Electoral Campaign School, April 13th and 14th, and the launch of the Make Our Black Votes Count Uncommitted voter campaign, where we'll be joined by the campaign chair, Chimurenga Selembao. To get us started, we have the leader of the African nation, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, and chair of the Black is Back Coalition, as well as the primary target of the FBI's war on Black liberation, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who will read the call to the Electoral School, which you can access in the video description, followed by an overview. Then we'll be joined by Chimurenga Selembao, who will talk to us about the Uncommitted voter campaign, what you can do, and how to get involved. Following, we'll have announcements opening up to you, our live audience, for questions and answers. Don't forget to like and share this video far and wide. Comment somebody's name in the chat right now to invite them to this study, and subscribe to our channels. Follow the chairman on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, Twitter, or X. And, again, spread this discussion far and wide. They do not want you to have access to this kind of analysis, this kind of discussion. They'd rather keep you trapped and making you think that is between the lesser of two evils when there is an option, another option, there is an alternative, and it's within this movement. So share this video far and wide. And without further delay, I would like to welcome back to Omali Taught Me Sunday Study, the leader of the African nation, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Comrade Director Akile Anai. I would like to start by again acknowledging everyone who's here, but especially attention to our comrade brothers and sisters in Africa and in other places outside of the United States, where we are also struggling around the same contradiction against this whole colonial domination of our people, our Africa, and our lives everywhere we're located. I especially want to send a shout out to Kamana Afua Walla, who's there in Ghana, and who I know in every opportunity she gets, she's making it to, she's using it to forward the struggle of our people. I wanted to say that that this is an important discussion. It's important for us within the United States, Africans, and globally, because the problem that this system suffers from, whether it's here or whether it's in Europe and other places, is the fact that Africans live under colonial domination. We have lived under colonial domination in one form or another for 600 years. Initiated with the 1415 attack on Africa by Portugal, that created a whole global economy and established the basic relationships that most human beings on the planet Earth right now, most human beings are locked into a relationship that we refer to as a colonial mode of production that's never gone away. And no revolutionary movement that's happened any place on the planet has destroyed that, even though we've seen relative success in different places like Cuba, like China, like Vietnam, but there has been no overturning of this mode of production, because people have been locked into an understanding that what we were dealing with, the most advanced of our thinkers anyway, have been locked into an understanding what we were dealing with is capitalism as a mode of production that followed the destruction of a feudal mode of production in Europe, and that hasn't been the case. Europe escaped from feudalism through a colonial mode of production that has all of the world now locked into its grasp. For the first time, a whole world economy. So when we talk about this election in this country and various other places, we are having to deal with the fact that we are colonized people, that America refuses to recognize that we are colonized people. America refuses to recognize that it is a settler colony itself that has established a template for what we see happening in Palestine, what we see in New Zealand, what we see in Canada, Australia, etc. This is the setup that has been established with our enslavement. On the one hand. On the other hand, this process that gave rise to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America has been described as a democratic process. It's been described as a democratic process by those who benefited from it. And those who benefited from it were those people, white people, who have defined themselves as white, subsequent to the struggle that they were involved in, or the struggle that came out of feudalism by peasants and not just peasants and serfs, but others who were locked into this really unjust kind of relationship where there was no law except the laws of God as interpreted by the kings and queens and things like that. And so who determined what taxes would be paid and by whom, who established all the rules and regulations that existed. So this was what they were running from. And when they broke free from that, they called it democracy. They established rules and constitutions and things like that. At the same time, what broke them free from it was not some magic, not some noble words written by some wonderful philosophers, whether we call them Marx or whether we call them Rousseau or Hobbes and other people like that. What broke them free from that was the attack on what we now call the Americas, the indigenous people here, the theft of this land that committed horrendous acts of violence and near genocide against an entire population, and the attack on Africa. Then the fundamental to the entire establishment of this setup was the attack on Africa. And this is the thing that established for the first time a world economy and a world system. So what we define as society has changed from how Europe understood society as being located in, I say Europe, but there was no Europe. Europe came out of this process that I'm talking about too, what we know as Europe. There were these fiefdoms that were struggling among themselves and with each other and defined themselves in relationship to each other, but consolidated this common concept of Europe, of the white man, et cetera, was enslavement of African people. And now we had all these people who were Celts and who were Normans and other things before have now become Europe and Europeans out of that process. And what they've done is they've established all these rules and these concepts of democracy, but it rests upon enslavement and genocide of other peoples. That's the reality we're confronted with. And even as we go into these elections, that's what we have to contend with. Because part of what colonialism requires is the disappearance of those who have been colonized. That's obviously true with settler colonialism, where you take a land from a people, you come and you occupy the people's land, and take the land. They have to be disappeared in order to validate the basis of being there. You can't establish why you are there as long as there are people whose land that you are on who are claiming control of their land, who are saying, get off our land, and that kind of thing. But colonialism generally requires the negation of the existence of those who are colonized, because otherwise we have a situation where society has defined itself as conquerors, as rapists, as terrorists, etc. They can't define themselves as that. So you hear the story all the time. There was nobody there when we saw it, and we just came and took it because there was nobody there when we got there. Or if we got there, they have to do the most demeaning and dehumanizing things to say that even though there's these forms we're walking around, they were not really human. They have to define us as beasts and bestialize us and as compared to themselves, and they are wonderful. The murderers, the rapists, those who are perpetuating violence against everybody else are wonderful. And you know how they can prove it is because unlike those who they are violating, they have these laws, they have these rules, they have these constitutions resting on graves, resting on genocide and slavery, et cetera. So that's what we're looking at. And so you've got this situation where there's a conundrum, because on the one hand, having declared themselves to be this great democratic force in the world for civilization and all those other things, on the other hand, they have to explain the continuing struggle by those who they have stolen it from, by those upon whose lives and resources they have created this thing. These forces continue to push forward, trying to live, which is just a part of the process of existence for human life, to express, the need to live, to be able to reproduce ourselves, to say that we are going to have children, the children will have children, and there is a relationship, a culture, something that makes us good. And so this process is something that challenges the stability and everything of a social system. So one way they get rid of the colonized people by the colonizer is to declare the end of colonialism. They declare this as a consequence. They have to declare because the people are engaged in this struggle, not for the colonized do they have to declare. They have to declare it for themselves. They have to declare it for the world to say that what we are doing now is not being something, we're not doing what you say we're doing, because the forces that you say exist don't exist. There is no such thing as colonized people. And there are some different races that's in town, and that's what makes us wonderful, because we're this wonderful society with all these races coexisting among each other. So they liquidate my national identity, and they say that anything I'm doing now is something that disrupts the happiness and the wonderfulness and the democracy of this multinational, this integrated, this wonderful melting pot of happiness. So then the colonized people become the disruptors of civilization, et cetera, by just trying to live. And so here we have the situation. And what we remember is, as we go into this discussion, these interlopers, these people who came and stole indigenous land, brought me here on indigenous land, set up these laws and rules and what have you. They never account, and they never determined, they never considered me having anything to do with their lives, except being servants, learning how to dance and sing and please them, or something to that effect. We are comedy relief, so to speak, in the lives of the settlers, in the lives of the colonizers, in the lives of white people. That's what we are here for, entertainment. Not to be taken seriously as a force that might have agency, that might have interest, that might have a will, that might have aspirations separate and from the aspirations of the colonizers. And so here we are. And when they made these rules for themselves, again, they were not supposed to apply for us. And that's what we're looking at now. And we're facing trial. They want to put me in jail for life. Comrades Jesse Neville and Penny Hess, they want to put in jail for 15 years. And the crime is that Jesse Neville and Penny Hess violated the most incredibly significant rule that has held this entire thing together. That is, they, as colonizers, upon whom whose lives, et cetera, as a group, depend on control of the colonized, demeaning this, just having the worst kinds of relationship. They've joined with the colonized who are trying to end this relationship. And this is extraordinary because as colonizers, they benefit from this relationship And they betrayed all the other colonizers by deserting them and coming over to the side of the colonized. What a crime. And so we have things like laws, and part of what we are dealing with is, the right to vote, which never was for us. I mean, when the colonized, we were not supposed to vote. Don't vote. Who ever heard of a slave voting? I mean, that's like, can you imagine them having elections on the plantation? And the slave masters running to see who was going to get elected to be over the slaves and things like that, and having to come through the quarters and say, if you elect me, as I won't beat you except 3 times a week. I won't be like Mr. Bob over there who beats you every week, every day of the week. This is most ridiculous. They never intended for African people, the indigenous people, the Mexican people to ever be able to vote our future. This was something that had been put together for the colonizers themselves, so they could have a nonviolent contest for control of the state apparatus, the military, the police, the jails and the prisons, the education system, all of that. The way the whole thing works, it was set up for them to do this non-violently because they deal with us violently all the time. And it makes it unnecessary. The thing was to make it unnecessary for the settlers to have to fight among themselves, the colonizers to have to fight among themselves to maintain the status quo. So they have elections. And the elections happen within the parameters established for the maintenance and continuation of the colonial system that dominates me. So that's a contradiction. It's a conundrum. It's not mine, it's theirs. And this is what we're looking at. I just want to say that. And then there's so much more that we can and should talk about. We won't do that all today. We have established various kinds of processes to further this discussion, to advance it and deepen this discussion. But right now, what I would do is act as much as I can in a disciplined fashion and follow the leadership of Comrade Director Akile Anai, who asked me to read the call that we've made for the upcoming school electoral campaign. And the thing that makes this electoral campaign so important, the school that we've been doing for such a long period of time, is because at the moment African people forced the United States government to pretend that we had access to the electoral process, that we too could pursue our interests through the electoral process that had been established to maintain this relationship. The moment this occurred, it created a dilemma for them, or it should have created a dilemma for them, because the way it got to be this way is that African people were in the streets, were everywhere fighting for freedom. And our struggle had been so defined that freedom meant having access to the same kinds of what was characterized democratic processes that white people had. That's how it was defined. That meant that we should be able to participate in the elections and things like that, and we fought for it. Being people they killed us, of course, we wanted to just join Joe Biden's party. They killed us. They killed our children. They bombed our churches. They used torture, and people are familiar with the torture. They use electric cattle prods, and people were witnessing this on the news on a regular basis. There are all kinds of people who were martyred just for trying to join Joe Biden's party. They killed us and tortured us. And so they said, okay, a number of kinds of contradictions converged and made it necessary for them to at least pretend that we were going to have rights. But we had established programs for Black people, Black power, through a number of struggles. Malcolm X, extraordinary leader of our community, who talked about the fact that here we are trying to have a movement where you can sit on the toilet next to white people, integrate into the system. How insane is that? Malcolm X was ridiculing this kind of effort and ridiculing the notion that we had to limit how we made this struggle and put forth what he called a program of Black nationalism. He traveled throughout the world promoting this program of Black nationalism that unite the struggle of African people with oppressed peoples all around the world. It was Malcolm who went into Gaza and talked about the liberation of the Palestinian people. It was Malcolm who reminded us of the Mau Mau and Uhuru. It was Malcolm who talked about those little people in Vietnam had nothing but a blade who fought against U.S. imperialism. It was Malcolm who derided the notion that Black people in this country shouldn't fight because we were outnumbered. It was Malcolm who made mockery of the fact that we were able to go and fight against the people in Korea who were backed up by more than 1 billion Chinese on the one hand, but said we couldn't fight for our freedom here. It was Malcolm who did this. So Malcolm had a program, and it was a Black nationalist program. It said that Black people should control our communities, the economy of our communities, the politics of our community, and put forth this as a program and had left the Nation of Islam and had entered into the struggle around elections and votings and stuff like that. He initiated this, and Malcolm made this incredible speech, and everybody should go to it, The Ballot or the Bullet. You can Google it. In 1964, he made this incredible speech, and in 1965, at 1964, of course, that was the year that African people, through blood, sweat, terror against terror, won the so-called Civil Rights Bill was passed. Made it necessary for the U.S. government to say we're going to give these Negroes some civil rights. And you must remember this, because if we had any kinds of rights at all, if we had rights, if the Constitution was taking care of us, then why did they have to have a Civil Rights Bill in 1964? Why? Because the Constitution was meaningless as it related to Black people. And because that was 1964 when they passed that. But as, 1857, more than 100 years prior to that, the Supreme Court of the United States had ruled that the Black man has no rights that a white man has to respect. It was Martin Luther King who had led this movement for a long period of time. I'm saying he led it because it's not absolutely true, because Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, Ella Baker, incredible forces like that were on the scene, on the ground, making struggles. But King became the symbol for that. And he was a magnificent symbol in terms of the limitations that were within which he led this movement and struggle. And but he had begun to question the thing of trying to integrate into a burning house. I mean, audibly, he made this public kinds of statements, and how he had to unite with the struggle of the people in Vietnam. It was King who ended up saying that it's not just enough to be able to run around getting this guy elected or that guy elected. We have to have this poor people's program that has to be a revolution of the values in the United States of America, and that initiated a poor people's campaign that was supposed to be able to have Africans and other people descend on Washington, D.C. to disrupt the business as usual until they put forth a program of economic justice for Black people in this country. That was 1968. Of course, in the meantime, we've had movements, Student Nonviolent Coordinating, Black Power, SNCC, JOMO, that I was a member of, and SNCC that I was a member of, and then the Black Panther Party with its 10-point program. All these programs representing the interests of Black people by Black people. And then they killed off the leadership of this. And so in 1965, they passed a Voting Rights Act that said you can vote, but in 1965, they killed Malcolm X. And in 1960s, you see this war that has been initiated against the Black liberation movement in this country, assassination, mass incarceration. That was the order of the day. In fact, you saw from that period for the next few years, something like a 500% increase in the numbers of Black people who were put in prison in this country.
So we weren't supposed to be able to participate. They shot it out. They shot Malcolm's program out by killing him. They killed King's program by killing him. No 10-point program from the Black Panther Party or a 7 or 14-point program from the JOMO or any of the organizations like that. We had no program at all. The only thing we got now is a Democratic Party that we can come into without any program of our own. So the Democratic Party becomes the organization. People are dead, people are in prison. The Democratic Party becomes the organization, and they say, now you can vote. And they establish what it is that you're going to be voting for. And then we had the temerity to create the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparation that's reorganizing, bringing all of the tendencies for self-determination that had been shot out of existence, jailed out of existence, murdered out of existence, terrorized out of existence. We brought it back together, this incredible movement. And then from that, we said, let's create a national Black political agenda for self-determination, because people were still talking about self-determination in some way or another. But the self-determination they talked about was represented by the people who they put in power after they killed the original leaders of the movement. This is a part of a counterinsurgency to give substitute. It's what Malcolm X used to call a pacifier, similar to what they do to a baby. A baby cries, want milk, stick a pacifier in his mouth. You don't get anything real, you just suck on that pacifier. And that's what they did with us. And so the civil rights thing became a pacifier, a substitute for the real power that Black people need to be able to determine the future, our future, and the destiny of our people. So anyway, the ballot and the bullet is what we're going to talk about. And on April 13 and 14, 2014, the Black is Back Coalition, and this is, by the way, the call that's made for this incredibly significant school, the 8th school of the Black is Back Coalition engaged in the electoral process. And you can find Malcolm here. You can find King here. You can find the Black Panther Party here. You can find the Black Liberation Movement, SNCC, and everything that they thought they had shot out of existence. Here it is. Black is back. So anyway, on April 13 and 14, and it's really important to understand this, because they had killed Black out. They had jailed Black out. They had terrorized the Black out of it and then put this pablum before the people as a substitute for our struggle. And we had no program. Joe Biden was our leadership. The Joe Biden who wants to talk about civil rights now, but when civil rights was on the agenda back in the day, he was opposed to it. Who wants you to try to get busing now, but when busing was on the agenda back in the day, he was opposed to it. And he's still opposed to the rights of Black people, which is why 5 o'clock in the morning on July 29, 2022, grenades are going off at my home and at offices and homes of other members of our movement. All we wanted to do and continue to want to do is to pursue our interests independently. And they couldn't even claim that we had guns. They couldn't claim that we were violent, that we were doing any kinds of criminal activity. And they couldn't claim they were doing it to us because we were talking. Because talking is supposed to be a democratic right. It was a democratic right they conferred among themselves. But they didn't confer it on the slaves and those who they colonized. And here are the colonized, the ones who have been shot out of political activity, political organization, are speaking for themselves around an election that we are not supposed to participate in. And we are only participating in, of course, of the most serious kinds of struggles that we were involved in against the government that's supposed to be free for freedom of everybody around the world. So anyway, on April 13 and 14, 2024, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations will conduct our 8th electoral candidate school. You must be there. This is a crucial initiative occurring at a critical moment in the history of the world's economic and political configuration that's fabricated from a 600-year-old process that began with the colonial enslavement of our people and our Africa. We explained the need for the Black Electoral School with these words in 2022. I'm quoting here. The sectors of the ruling class and their ruling parties arrogantly assume, this is 2022, that the electoral future of the people is in their hands. We know different. This is why the Black is Back Coalition decided several years ago to provide leadership for our people who engage in electoral politics. This allows the people to advance our struggle against the entire colonial capitalist system, while the electoral politics are still an option. We will teach ordinary African people, workers, activists, women, and youth how to run for office. The Black is Back Electoral School will also address the age-old question of whether or not there are any legitimate gains to be won by Africans participating in elections in a colonial capitalist system. In 2016, the Black is Back Coalition laid the foundation for participation in any election by initiating a successful year-long popular process to create a national Black political agenda for self-determination as a general guide for political work throughout the United States. In April 2017, we held our first electoral campaign school in St. Petersburg, Florida, attended by Africans from several states within the United States. In addition to teaching African people the steps for running for office, we were intent on arming activists with a platform for self-determination as the basis for their electoral campaign. The coalition has seized custody of an electoral process that has historically been separated from and used against our people and struggle. We now have a tool that we can use to positively affect the lives of our community, unquote. Since the adoption of the Black is Back 19-point political agenda in 2016, it has influenced the platforms of several political candidates. The Electoral School is convening during a moment of disequilibrium that includes the growing dissolution of the Atlantic Bloc, organized by the United States, that includes all the traditional colonial powers of the world domination that was constructed to contain what was then known as Soviet Russia following World War II, or the Second Imperialist World War. The Black is Back Electoral Candidate School was initiated in 2017 and designed to open a new and critical front in our struggle for Black self-determination in the United States. It allows us to express the popular anti-colonial will of our people utilizing the electoral process for the first time. And it's important to make this point. It's the first time the popular anti-colonial participation in the electoral process. We were participating in the elections when they finally, after they killed Malcolm, they killed King, they destroyed the Black Panther Party and much of the Black liberation movement. Now you can vote, but you couldn't vote against colonialism. And so now, for the first time in history, what this coalition has done is provide an opportunity for African people to express the popular anti-colonial will of the people, the anti-colonial will of the people. The Electoral School was necessitated after the U.S. government successfully neutralized the blood-drenched victory of our people that resulted in passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. That for the first time since post-slavery Reconstruction legalized universal suffrage, or the right to vote for everyone. However, as we were to learn, this was a hollow victory. And even this thing that they call Reconstruction, where African people were supposed to be able to vote, it was terror. It was terror continuously waged against Black people trying to vote during this era that people sometimes romantically refer to as when Black people elected this and elected that. We had no real power. This power of the state continued to be in the hands of the oppressors, whether they call themselves Northerners or Southerners, etc. And so this Reconstruction that we are talking about, where everything was supposed to be rosy, hunky-dory, so to speak, we were met with constant, consistent violence. And that's why it ended because of this violence. So, however, as we were to learn, this was a hollow victory. The 1965 Voting Rights Act was passed in the same year as the U.S. government's assassination of Malcolm X on February 21st. Malcolm X had presented an anti-colonial political program for African people during the 1964 presidential election campaign that was exemplified by two eloquent speeches with the title, "The Ballot or the Bullet," considered among the greatest speeches of the 20th century. That's what some people wrote. You know, it's one of the greatest speeches in the 20th century. I agree. Malcolm it was a great speech, but they missed the point. That was a great speech. They missed the point, even if he had used double negatives and what have you. And the point was that we had to struggle against colonialism for our own power as a people. Malcolm's program advanced what he called a philosophy of Black nationalism that would use the electoral process to unite African people across ideological lines, to take over political and economic control of our own communities. Dr. Martin Luther King of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, as he was in the process of launching his Poor People's Campaign. And I could mention to you SNCC's work and Julian Bond, who had run for office and had won election in the Georgia State Assembly, a state legislature, but was not allowed to be seated because he was opposed to the Vietnam War. These are examples of instances where African people were trying to move with an independent agenda about local stuff. The Vine City Project in Vine City, Georgia, where people were taking on the horrors of poverty and the structural economic processes that locked us into the states of severe destitution as a norm. This is what we were organizing around at this time. And so it's not, you know, these are not, you don't find this in a political program. You don't even have the Democratic Party with the program, even this election talking about stop gentrification. How simple is that? Stop kicking Black people out of their homes and communities. They don't even have that on the agenda. Even that dumb-looking person who stands behind Biden when he's, muttering, nodding with a silly grin on her face. She doesn't even talk about, don't kick the Black people out of their homes and destroy our communities. That's what a simple thing. But that's not on there. That's not on. Say, why can't they say, empty these prisons of Black people? Everybody knows that there's something wrong with that. Why can't they say, stop the police from murdering Black people all over this country on a regular basis? Not one of them. That's not even on their agenda. It's not even a part of what it is that they are running for office around. None of that's on the agenda because they kill us off. And now it's back. It's on the agenda because we're putting it there, because you are putting it there, because you are participating, and because you're going to be in St. Louis on April 13th and 14th, and get here on the 12th if you can, because we're going to show you all the practical programs that have been put down on the ground in St. Louis. Some 20 some odd properties have been acquired within the last period since they killed Mac Brown as a part of the process of subduing and killing Black people out of the struggle, telling Black people not to resist. There are some 20 some odd properties that have been accumulated. This under the leadership of Comrade Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela, who was in the House with me when they blew it up and came out with tanks and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, so Dr. Martin Luther King of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, as he was in the process of launching his Poor People's Campaign. Like Malcolm X, King's program was a campaign to move beyond simply voting for the colonial ruling class parties. It was a campaign program to mobilize activists from throughout the U.S. to descend on Washington, D.C. with a relentless and militant direct action disruption campaign for political and economic restructuring of the United States to benefit Africans, workers, and the poor. During this same period, the Black Panther Party and the independent 10-point anti-colonial program came under an escalated military attack in 1969. This included the counterinsurgents' arrest of 21 members of the Black Panther Party in New York on fabricated conspiracy charges, and the December 4th U.S. murder of Panther leaders Fred Hampton and Mark Clark in Chicago, Illinois. A week after the Chicago attack on the Black Panther office, the organization was attacked in Los Angeles and fought U.S. government forces to a standstill in an hours-long gun battle. This was the brutal, murderous attack on our movement by the United States government that was designed to destroy our just struggle against colonialism while giving the false appearance to the world of U.S. democratic access to the electoral process. This was a colonial war that gives lie to the oft-proclaimed absence of political violence in the United States that has been a convenient propaganda contrivance used by the United States as evidence of its superior electoral process. We could now vote, but now we had nothing to vote for. Following the war on our movement, we now had only limited independent programs and organizations that addressed our collective self-determined interests as domestically colonized subjects of U.S. power. Our political agency was initially expressed so powerfully by the organized African masses in the 1960s. Our political agency, which was initially expressed so powerfully by the organized African masses in the 1960s, was now effectively destroyed by assassination, bribery, and other counterinsurgent means, including mass and targeted imprisonment and a slanderous propaganda blitz by ruling class media assets that demonized our growing cause for Black power and that were willing all the time to say, yeah, they work for the Russians. They must work for the Russians if they're talking about freedom. And the only reason they must be working for the Russians is because the Chinese don't have the ability to do it. Or maybe they do. And maybe they're working for the Chinese and the Russians and perhaps the Iranians part of this as well. This is what the bourgeois media, and people say, well, why won't, I did an interview a couple of weeks ago, and the guy was saying, well, why won't the New York Times write about this? Why haven't we heard from the Washington Post? They are writing about it. Every time they say Russia is this insidious force that's attacking your rights to kill people in Ukraine and Russia and all these other, that's what they're doing. They by virtue of not mentioning it, they are mentioning it. It's saying it doesn't exist. What we are talking about is not real. And to make sure that you believe it's not real, they do everything to make sure you can't hear anybody else. The African People's Socialist Party and the Hutu movement under this leadership were founded in 1972 for the stated purpose of completing the Black Revolution of the 1960s that the U.S. government had nearly extinguished. Today, as we approach the 2024 election season, the colonial mode of production upon which the entire parasitic global system rests is facing an existential crisis. Its existence is being threatened now, internationally and for the shaky U.S. hegemon domestically. The counterinsurgent war against our struggle for happiness and the return of our right to self-determination has receded from the memory of many people, including Africans. The colonial U.S. government is determined to maintain this historical amnesia during its moment of crisis. The July 29, 2022 attack on the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement, including violent military assaults on 7 Uhuru movement homes and properties and charges by the federal government that could result in 15-year prison sentences for the chairman of the Black Coalition, African People's Socialist Party, and 2 leaders of the White Solidarity Front of the Uhuru movement. These attacks helped to expose the point of crisis contextualizing the 2024 elections. Falsely charged with being agents of Russia, a foreign power, because the political work the African People's Socialist Party has been doing for more than 50 years The case of the Uhuru Three represent a blatant attack on democratic rights ostensibly conferred by the United States Constitution and reaffirmed by subsequent legislation and Supreme Court rulings. Nevertheless, the Uhuru Three are facing violation of their First Amendment rights to free speech, association, and assembly, as well as violation of Fourth Amendment for prohibition against unreasonable search and seizure, among others. Domestic crisis is reflected in the fact that Donald Trump, a former U.S. president who is also a candidate for election as U.S. president, is himself under attack by the colonial state. It is an attack by a sector of the colonial ruling class that is designed to diminish his effectiveness in the election that could threaten their interests as reflected in the presidential re-election campaign by Joseph Biden, the sitting president. In other words, what we see now is that this attack that's being made on Trump right now is part of Biden's campaign to be reelected. And it's a naked utilization of the colonial state for this purpose. And this is not a defense of Trump. This is just a recognition of what the hell is going on so that we can understand this attack that's being made on us as well. This is a naked utilization of the colonial state power in pursuit of an election that's supposed to be free and fair and a nonviolent contest between different sectors of the ruling class itself. Now we see the state, the military, the court system, et cetera, being used as a part of the campaign to get one person who's seated in office elected versus another person who used to be seated in an election and who also had control of the apparatus of the state and still controls vicariously sectors of the colonial state as well. There's some truth to the declaration by some political pundits that the electorate of the United States is almost evenly divided between Biden and Donald John Trump, leaders of the colonial ruling Democratic and Republican parties. However, that is a deceptive assessment for the benefit of political analysis because at least 20% of the Democratic Party membership consists of colonized African people, with another significant percentage belonging to other internally colonized people like Mexicans, indigenous people, et cetera. And people who live in Puerto Rico who meet the definition of both of those iterations that I just mentioned. In other words, Africans and other colonial subjects are counted among the contending sectors of the colonial population, although we have diametrically different material interests than those of the white settlers of both parties. And a problem exists only because they have succeeded in killing and getting rid of people like Lolita LeBron and Juan Martínez and other people who stood up for the liberation of Puerto Rico because they have succeeded in crushing the Mexican national liberation movement as it represents itself at different times in history, so that it is not ubiquitous, this stuff that Unión de Barrio, which from the Mexican national liberation movement is doing, and because they did kill Malcolm and all these other folk, et cetera. So the people now have been convinced, or that the only means of struggle, the parameters of the movement we're involved in, falls within the system that's been established by the colonizers. So you got to go with the Democrats, you got to go with Republicans. You can't go for yourself. And going for yourself means having your own organization, means having your own independent philosophy that represents the interests of your own people against a social system that built itself off enslaving us and killing us, et cetera. So we say, in other words, Africans and other colonial subjects are counted among the contending sectors of the colonial population, although we have diametrically different material interests than those of the white settlers of both parties. This political dependency on the colonized for power is testimony to the dilemma of the U.S. colonial bourgeoisie that has often bedeviled colonizers historically. And so that's what we've seen with empires at different times. They often find themselves, to defend themselves, have to rely on those who they have conquered for their defense, to bring them in the army, bring them anytime. If you don't know what I mean, go to through the security component at the airport and see who's checking your bags and see who's accepting. You don't tell me that's not a serious vulnerability. Go to the bank, go to all these other places where you have to go through security checks and things like that. Even the person who they have overseeing me while I'm under a virtual house arrest is a Negro. So they use the colonized. This is something that the colonizer always ends up having to do. For one thing, there are too few of them to carry it out by themselves. And then the second thing, and while still acting like there's some kind of democracy, because they have to do this, they have to have lynching ropes and available to see. They have to negate the whole democratic process and come out like they did with Emmett Till in the middle of the night and take people away and children and kill them. So they don't want to do that anymore because that's become a problem. And because there are literally too few of them to be able to maintain. So they give the impression of Black people participating in our own, in the system in a way that legitimates the oppression that they initiate against us. But people wake up. And every empire has had to face the consequences of the reality that they have to end up with those who they oppress and who they have enslaved. They have to end and using them for the maintenance of the system of oppression and enslavement. And it always backfires, ultimately. So anyway, that's another story. So I want to go ahead and expedite this because I know that Comrade Akile is rightfully being quite concerned with my verbosity. So anyway, even so, according to U.S. media reports, ongoing polling show that the ongoing polling shows that the Democratic Party's presidential election chances are severely threatened by breaches in the political monopoly exercised by the ruling Democratic and Republican parties, with sizable sectors of the colonial ruling class using all possible means to crush the likely election of Donald John Trump as U.S. president. That the whole nonviolent contest is becoming increasingly inching more and more toward a violent contest. That's what the utilization of state power in this frame represents. It's coercion that allows the state to maintain the status quo. It isn't because they pass out good books for people to read or Bibles or something like that. It's coercion. It's the police, it's the military, it's the FBI, it's the CIA, excuse me, that's necessary to maintain the status quo. And so increasingly, the utilization of the state, when you see the utilization of the state like this, in what's supposed to be this nonviolent contest between contending sects of the bourgeoisie, you are seeing the introduction or near introduction of violence as a part of this process of making a determination who's going to control the colonial state. So Trump's competition for election as the Republican nominee for president in the upcoming Republican primary appears negligible. In fact, as we know, Trump has already won the nomination in the Republican Party, as Biden has with the Democratic primary election. However, the same cannot be said of Joseph Biden, the sitting U.S. president, who is facing an array of contenders, including the vote siphoning likelihood by some who left the Democratic Party to contest with Biden for the U.S. presidency. According to polls cited in USA Today in January of this year, Biden now claims only 63% of the Black vote. And I think it's less than that now. It's a precipitous decline from the 87% he carried in 2020, and maybe barely 50% right now in terms of polling. This is a major monkey wrench for an electoral process designed to eliminate any but representative of the two hegemonic colonial ruling class parties in a nonviolent contest between contending sectors of the ruling class for control of the colonial state. I keep saying that because it's important for us to understand, to get around this nonsense about what the elections are really about. It is a nonviolent contest, and that's why it never represents the interests of the people. Even the white people who benefit from, in certain ways, from being able to go to a supermarket in their neighborhood and buy out-of-season food all year round because it's being stolen from someplace else around the world, on the one hand. On the other hand, face the consequence too often of a collapse of democratic rights, especially when this contest deepens and sharpens between the colonized and the colonizers. And that is to say, the payment that the colonizers receive for their participation, their unity with the colonial mode of production is threatened, and challenged. So the rights normally, afforded to the colonizers are threatened on a regular basis. And usually when this happens, the colonizers will unite in the most horrendous attacks being made against those who are colonized, who are always blamed for why you're starving, and that oil that we get for however much per gallon or liter at the service station coming from countries where people don't have service stations, et cetera. It's the dirty Arabs who are responsible for that, or the Nicaraguans who are responsible, or the Venezuelans who are responsible for that, or Niger, where we get, France gets most of the uranium that lights its homes, and where Niger lives in perpetual darkness. It's they who are responsible for it. And if they're not obviously responsible for it, then it's the Russians who are hiding behind them who are responsible for it. This is the kind of stuff that passes off, and people buy into because they don't have access to anything else. And it's also because their stomachs and pocketbooks make it easy to believe that stuff they're saying. I mean, just think about this. What kind of crisis would it be if all the white people in this country, in this instance, I'm talking about the United States, were face to face in a very serious way and had to deal with the fact that they own the land of indigenous people. They stole all this land. And the people are starving and dying as a consequence. They had to live. They'd go to sleep thinking about this. All these people who are dying now, we stole this land. This land I'm sitting on is their land, et cetera. This fallacy has to be there, has to be perpetuated. Even the oppressor has to believe in the justness of what it is that the oppressor is doing, why they fabricate all this nonsense about there was nobody here, so we just took it over. They didn't know what to do with it. They were barbarians, uncivilized. We brought civilization in the Bible to them. It wasn't for us. There would have been nobody to pray to while we were lynching them. That kind of stuff. So, in a process that is growing more acrimonious every day, to the point of occasional violent contention and the often partisan participation of the colonial state, open partisan participation of the colonial state. The legitimacy of the electoral process in the United States is also being challenged by open hostilities between contending sectors of the colonial bourgeoisie. A near subterranean movement is in place by allies of Trump, who declares the last election that deposed him from presidency was rigged to effect the election of Biden. The Republican Party has organized to win local elections that will seize the power to make critical decisions on local levels to determine the legitimacy of registered voters, the location of voting sites, and the conduct and procedures for voters voting and the vote counting for the 2024 election, presidential election. I remember George Wallace having been quoted after having lost an election in Alabama on one occasion because of the Black question, saying that he's never going to be out-niggered again when he ran for office. And so this is what we have here. We have a situation where a sector of the bourgeoisie is saying they're never going to be out-cheated again. They're never going to be cheated out of out-rigging elections again. So internationally, the U.S. is engaged in wars and threats of wars throughout the world in a recklessly desperate effort to maintain its hegemony and to protect the existence of the parasitic colonial mode of production upon which the entire capitalist system relies for success. The African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement were attacked by the United States government in part because of the party's open dissension with the U.S.-initiated war against Russia that has already resulted in the deaths of thousands of Russians and Ukrainian pawns. This war and the ongoing military taunting of and confrontation with the People's Republic of China, directly or indirectly through supplicants and or ad hoc alliances within the China-Pacific region, inches the world closer to the possibility of nuclear conflagration. And you can't say anything about it, because if you do, you're working for the Russians. As we are preparing for the Black is Back electoral campaign school, the people of Palestine are still withstanding a murderous genocidal determination to maintain their colonial domination by a white nationalist settler colonial population and state. With the aid of the US and virtually every one of the colonial powers born of the colonial slave trade that created the existing world economy and political configuration of the world. Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, etc., are just some of the areas of anti-colonial contention the U.S. is attempting to stem. Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Sahel are some of the outstanding, best organized examples of the growing existential crisis to the colonial mode of production and U.S. domination in Africa. But the struggle in Africa and the capture of our resources from white colonial parasites is growing exponentially, and the African Socialist International, organized by the African People's Socialist Party, that is uniting the struggle of Africa and Africans globally, is another reason for the frantic assault on the African liberation movement by the US government on July 29th, and the criminal charges being used by the colonial state as a form of political repression. All the ingredients of a third global or world war are being currently consolidated by the dying colonial powers. This, as the peoples of the world who suffer from colonial domination, parasitic relations of production within this colonial mode of production, are struggling, sometimes at cross currents and ignorant of the laws of social development that should unite all the toiling masses to acquire the benefits of our labor. We of the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice understand these contradictions. We are organizing to use the electoral school to mobilize the African workers and all the colonized peoples and workers into motion with our own agenda as a rational revolutionary alternative to the political platter being offered to the peoples as our only choices. War and repression is the only outdated program available to the colonizers. It is insufficient and poisonous. It's used by date, has long passed. Malcolm and Martin were on the right path. These, along with the 10-point program of the Black Panther Party, were representative of the independent aspirations and interests of Africans and all people. The Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations has put forth a continuously developing national Black political agenda for self-determination that represents the best summation of all the independent African-led efforts for self-determination. The Electoral Campaign School is the most significant practical effort to forward the struggle for the total liberation of our people from colonial domination. It is a legal measure to carry out this program. We will win. We are winning. And the desperate and repressive acts of a dying colonial system is facing a dilemma of its own making and is incapable of doing anything. It is incapable of doing the right thing. Anything it does within this mass process represented by our school will forward our inevitable conquest of a dignified, liberated future. Black is back. Uhuru. Uhuru, comrade.
Uhuru, Chairman, what a powerful way to bring us back to the Omali Taught Me Sunday study with that just very powerful overview, this analysis, and the call to the Black is Back electoral campaign school. Comrades, I know after hearing that just electrifying call that you are just wanting to know how to get registered for that, how you can participate. Go to blackisbackcoalition.org and get registered today. It is happening in St. Louis, Missouri, and we want boots on the ground in St. Louis, Missouri on April 13th and 14th. So you can also find the link available in the chat and in the description for this video, blackisbackcoalition.org. So at this school, we will be talking more about the Make Our Black Votes Count Uncommitted Voter Campaign. It's going to be a whole presentation really going in depth about it, but we're actually going to get a preview right here on the Omali Taught Me Sunday study with campaign chair Chimurenga Selembao. So I want to welcome up Comrade Chimurenga, and can you please talk to our audience about this campaign and why it was initiated and any information about how people can get involved right now? Uhuru, Comrade Chimurenga.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. All right.
Yeah. Okay, video start. Yeah, I would really want to appreciate the chairman's overview of why the Black is Back is doing this electoral school. And of course, he did much more than that. He did a whole analysis of the world situation. And I think it's a perfect segue into the discussion about the campaign that the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations initiated to push people toward voting uncommitted. The chairman called me one day and he said, you know, this thing about voting uncommitted, particularly what they did in Michigan, some Palestinian forces did in Michigan, is really powerful. And he won me to the idea that the Black is Back could put forth its own campaign and expand those issues beyond just stopping the genocide against the Palestinian people, but also stopping the genocide against the Palestinian people, stop funding the settler colonial state of Israel, and redirect those funds, that money, that billions of dollars that is way overdue to be paid to African people in reparations. That money needs to be going to pay for reparations to African people. The genocide against African people is occurring right alongside the genocide of the Palestinian people. So we think that is one of the demands of the Make Our Votes Count campaign that is totally just goes right in line with the international demand that's being made by the Palestinian people. Also, one of the really important demands in our Make Our Votes Count campaign is drop the charges against the Uhuru 3. The chairman mentioned why himself, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, part of the Uhuru movement, chairman, head of the African People's Socialist Party, were viciously attacked on July 29th when they raided our buildings, raided the chairman's home, and now they have indicted him, framing him up on so-called charges of acting as a foreign agent without registering with the Attorney General. That has to be something that the Democratic Party must take on and make part of their platform. So we think that these kind of demands, freeing Leonard Peltier and all political prisoners, stopping the gentrification that is rampant throughout the United States and the African community and other colonized communities where we are being pushed out and can't afford to live in our own communities, and they're creating more and more white enclaves. I think it's a really important and dynamic program that the chairman has suggested. And what we're going to be doing is asking people to vote uncommitted, not just Black people, but to make Black votes count. Everybody that believes in those issues, believes that justice needs to be done in the electoral arena, that Black people's voices need to be heard. We want them to vote uncommitted. So Black people have a lot to gain by this. I know some people may be saying, well, Biden has already wrapped up the nomination. He has enough delegates to do that. And we're saying, yes, he does, but he still has an election to face in an election year where he is behind in several polls. So we think the possibilities for the Black is Back coalition to gain deeper and deeper unity with the masses of African people and gaining agency to really, in our fight back against colonial capitalism and the colonial mode of production, it can only be enhanced if we can get thousands of people who would never have been in our political orbit, thousands of people who have never been in a demonstration in their life, who are now being asked, vote uncommitted, vote for yourself, and vote for these issues that are important in the Black community, and then see what kind of difference that's going to make in moving the needle toward more power in the electoral arena for African people. So we are so the Black is Back Coalition created the Make Our Votes Count campaign. Those were just some of the issues that I raised, and I think it's going to be important that we do the presentation, the fuller presentation at the Black is Back Coalition Electoral School. I'm really looking forward to it. People should definitely go on the Black is Back Coalition .org website, donate to the Black is Back. We want to bring some dynamic speakers there. And of course, I'll be there to make a fuller presentation about how we can get involved in this Make Our Votes Count campaign. One of the things that you can do is go to our website, makeblackvotescount.com/now. Make Black Votes Count /now. And you'll see that you can donate. You can also become a volunteer. And you don't have to be in a state where there's an upcoming primary. You can help pass out flight, because this is a national campaign, and we also want to make sure that we're prepared to go even beyond the primaries. That the last one is going to be June 4th that we're targeting, but we want to be prepared even beyond the primaries, looking at candidates, looking at other issues that we're going to be forcing onto the agenda. So it's going to be important that people are willing to do phone banking, willing to put up posters, pass out flyers, help us get on the media, help spread this word about this uncommitted voter campaign. That's what we got to do. Put it on your Facebook pages, put it on your Instagram pages, whatever you can do to get this message out. So we're really looking forward. The Make Our Votes Count campaign is really looking forward to being at the Black is Back Coalition Electoral School. I know it's going to be dynamic. The chairman talked about all the programs that the Uhuru movement is carrying out in St. Louis. And I really look forward to being a part of that. I'm bringing some people with me as well. So we'll be looking forward to looking at all those programs. So Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chair Chimurenga of the Make Our Black Vote Count campaign. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, comrades, you will be able to see the full presentation at the Electoral Campaign School coming up April 13th and 14th. So you do not want to miss it. Go to blackisbackcoalition.org and get registered now. But thank you so much again, Chair Chimurenga, for breaking this down for us. And it's something that, as you said, masses of people who have never been in our political orbit before, or who have never engaged in, any form of, political protests or activism, or, however it's characterized, but being able to be involved in this kind of process, it's opening up the door for us to be organizing around these issues. And as you mentioned, we've seen the power of similar campaigns this year. And this campaign is putting forward an agenda that speaks to the interests of Black people, as well as other colonized and oppressed people. So just very, very excited about this campaign, the launch. And again, go to blackisbackcoalition.org, get registered so you can see the full presentation. And please stick around, Chair Chimurenga, because we will have questions coming from our live audience. And if you have a question about the Make Our Black Votes Count Uncommitted voter campaign, or any questions about any of the presentation that we've heard today from the chairman, please go ahead and type those into the chat right now, because we're going to take a look at those questions right after our announcements, which we're going to go into right now. So let's get started and look at our announcements. So first up, we have joined the counteroffensive to stop the FBI attacks on the African People's Socialist Party and the African Liberation Struggle. Drop the charges against the Uhuru 3, sign the petition, sign the emergency response pledge for immediate text messages regarding the trial, read all of the court documents, all of the new filings, complete the Uhuru 3 trial commitment and volunteer form. You can do all of this and more by going to handsoffuhuru.org. And later today at 12 p.m. U.S. Central Time, tune in to the Omali Yeshitela show as he interviews Chairman Omali Yeshitela. You can watch at youtube.com/@Omali Yeshitela. Again, that's today at 12 p.m. Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. And on Wednesday, April 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition hosts an important meeting with updates on this bogus case and to mobilize for the trial that's set to begin in September, on September 3rd of this year. So register at tinyurl.com/handsoffuhuru3. We're saying all out to the trial. So please join us on April 10th, this coming Wednesday, to learn about how you can do that and get your name, signed up to participate at the trial being in Tampa, Florida, come September 3rd. That's tinyurl.com/handsoffuhuru3. And on Thursday, April 11th at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, join the African People's Solidarity Committee for an online study and discussion. What is the colonial mode of production, and how can white people be anti-colonialist? Register to reserve your seat in this online study. Go to apscuhuru.org/study. And as mentioned, this coming weekend, April 13th and 14th, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations will conduct its 8th electoral campaign school in person in St. Louis, Missouri. And there is a virtual participation available as well. Learn more and register at blackisbackcoalition.org. On Saturday, April 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, join an event hosted by the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee and the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition titled The Case of Leonard Peltier, Why His Liberty is Bound to Ours. Learn the history of Leonard Peltier's case, why we must work to free this courageous anti-colonial indigenous freedom fighter who has been locked up in the colonial dungeons for nearly 50 years for defending his people on the Lakota Reservation in the 1970s. Featuring revolutionary professor, writer, and activist Ward Churchill, African People's Socialist Party Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and Leonard's lead appeal attorney Jennifer Jones. Register at tinyurl.com/Uhuru Peltier. Save the date for this exciting webinar on Sunday, May 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT, sponsored by the African Socialist International. Africans are demanding Africa for the Africans in this crisis for the colonial, against the colonial mode of production everywhere. We say build solidarity with the African resistance in Niger and forward the African revolution. Special guest speakers will feature Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Comrade Ibrahim Amadou, on the ground in Niger, Director of International Affairs, Secretary General Loezi Kinshasa, and more. Check back on the Burning Spear event calendar for more information. Again, that's Sunday, May 5th. And make sure you like and subscribe to the Burning Spear TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday study. Again, we are back with our weekly studies. We won't do our study next weekend because we will be at the Black is Back Electoral Campaign School, but we are officially back with the Omali Taught Me Sunday study. So go ahead and, again, subscribe to the Burning Spear YouTube channel so that you can get notifications for when we go live. Uhuru Tours and Speakers Bureau is an institution of the African People's Socialist Party that coordinates events and tours for Chairman Omali Yeshitela and other party speakers and leaders. Book Chairman Omali and other Uhuru Movement speakers for your campus or organization right now. Email info@uhurutours.com or call 727-914-3621. And for more events not listed here, go to theburningspear.com/events to see our calendar of everything upcoming in the Uhuru movement. So that concludes our announcements for today, comrades. Thank you for your patience as we get through those. And now we're going to take a look at questions from our live audience. We have our panelists here, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, leader of the African Nation, of the African People's Socialist Party and Uhuru movement, as well as Chimurenga Selembao, the chair of the Make Our Black Votes Count Uncommitted voter campaign. So we've had questions coming in since the beginning of the study. So a lot of these are directed right now to you, Chairman. But again, comrades, if you have any questions about any aspect of the discussion we've had up to now, please put those in the chat. And we have on the username, Kareem NYK 2001, who put this first question in. It's also a comment, says, I'm tired of my people being a joke in this world, tired of being humiliated everywhere we go. What's the solution? Socialism isn't enough in the settler colonial context, in my opinion. Chairman, I will direct that one to you if you want to go ahead and expound on this comrade's comment/question.
Uhuru, I really want to express appreciation to you, Comrade Kareem, for raising the question. Because if we were only talking about socialism as it relates to the existence of our people within the settler colony of the United States, I agree 100% with you. It can't work. We're looking at a colonial mode of production. And this colonial mode of production is something that envelops all of the things that people do in a greater society now that has been enlarged by the colonial mode of production, by a world economy that has been created through our colonial enslavement. So when we talk about what we look at in the United States is that it is the center. It is the thing that holds it. It's the center of gravity at this moment for the entire colonial settler project, for the entire colonial project of the world. And so our victory here, and then we must be victorious here, is key to the liberation of all of our people everywhere around the world. It's part of the process of a disintegration of a parasitic mode of production that is responsible for our oppression and exploitation, but also is responsible for the oppression and exploitation of everybody in the world. And that places an incredible burden on the shoulders of African people who are located in the United States. So my point, however, should not be misunderstood. We have a responsibility as Africans to win absolute, total, unconditional liberation of Africa, of the whole continent of Africa, every square inch of Africa, all the African people in the world. But we recognize that this is something that will liberate all the peoples of the world. And so we have an interest also, and wherever we see this global parasite being dealt damage and being afflicted with the problem of undermining it, then we have a responsibility of being united there too. And this is, if nothing else, is a matter of self-interest. Even if you don't have the ability to recognize the humanity of the children being murdered in Palestine, or the grotesque humiliation and murder of our people in places like Puerto Rico and Venezuela, and what they are doing to the Iranian and other people, even if you can't see that and have some recognition that international morality, revolutionary morality requires that we should unite with them, just self-interest should tell us that we have to see the unraveling of the social center that, again, America is the glue that holds it all together at this time. And so we have to be victorious here. And it's not just against, quote unquote, settler colonialism as it exists in the United States. It's against settler colonialism, which is the linchpin that holds the entire thing together and the oppression of all the people. So the socialism that we will acquire is not going to be some kind of domestic socialism. That won't work like that. There's not going to be a single place that will liberate everybody. It's going to be central to the liberation, to the destruction of a whole mode of production that opens the door for the liberation of all the people and everywhere we are located. I hope, Kareem, that was my response was helpful. If nothing else, that what I was saying was understandable. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman, thank you, and Comrade Kareem, thank you for your question as well. And I am self-critical because I forgot to mention where people are tuning in from, which is how we normally kick off questions and answers. So just to shout out these locations who have checked in with us today: Antigua and Barbuda in the Caribbean, Lakeland, Florida, the settler colony of South Africa, we call it occupied Azania, comrades are tuned in, Oakland, California, Louisville, Kentucky, Atlanta, Georgia, St. Louis, Missouri, Namibia, Largo, Florida, Gainesville, Florida, occupied Calgary, Alberta, Canada, Lexington, Kentucky, and Haiti or Haiti have all checked in with us on today. So if you haven't let us know where you're tuning in from, please drop that in the chat. We would love to shout you out. So now getting us back to our questions coming from today.
Comrade Director,
Yes,
if someone has the ability, I think it would be helpful for them to put in the chat or some way for people to have access to the fact that we've opened a new office in one of the townships right there in South Africa, or occupied Azania. It's an incredible
bit of work that's being done there on the ground. And these comrades are also looking for resources to help, make this thing happen. I think if people saw the video and see what we're doing, I think that it would happen in a good way. And it's another expression of African internationalist solidarity and unity. So if someone could do that, that would be helpful. Thank you, Uhuru.
Yes, Uhuru, thank you, Chairman, for that reminder. Comrades, our chat moderators, please go ahead and link that video into the comment section so that the people have access to, be able to witness that incredible feat and to know that we have an office right there in occupied Azania in South Africa. And salute to our comrades right there organizing on the ground who made that happen. So going to our questions, we have Comrade Diop who asks, is the existence of APSC, that's the African People's Solidarity Committee, a statement of the contradiction that exists between the white population and the colonial capitalist ruling class? Chairman.
Yeah, I think it's a statement of the contradiction that exists, but it's an unacknowledged and, generally speaking, unrecognized contradiction. And that's what makes the existence of the African People's Solidarity Committee so extremely important. And I would say that it should be recognized that the African People's Solidarity Committee is something that was organized by the African People's Socialist Party. So as a part of the strategic project of the African Revolution, that opened up a whole new front that recognizes that we are dealing with a colonial mode of production, that the entire social system requires the unity of the settlers or the colonized, all the colonizer population with the struggle of colonized people and of Africans. And when we have an opportunity, we will be able to say how the colonial question has always been central, even though it hasn't been recognized as central to the construction of the capitalist mode of production that many white people are able and eager to talk about fighting against capitalism, et cetera, but they would fight against capitalism that's resting on the backs of an African people without fighting against the colonial mode of production itself. And Karl Marx himself was saying that what he characterized as wage slavery required as a pedestal slavery, pure and simple, in the so-called New World. Wage slavery in Europe, as they put it. That is to say, working class, the capitalist system in this operation in Europe required as a pedestal, a foundation, slavery pure and simple in the New World. So this is the most important development. And it's critical to help, we've initiated this process to help white people, colonizers, escape from this illogical, irrational, in many ways, unity with a social system that only promises death and destruction because the peoples who are colonized are going to fight to destroy. And the question that's ultimately before white people and colonizers, which side are you going to stand on? The side of the people, which will be victorious. There's no way the world can continue to exist if everybody is enslaved. And so the side of those people who are fighting against slavery, which is the side of the future, or whether you try to continue to stand on the side of the past, which is dying, which is colonialism itself. So I know, Comrade Diop, that's a pretty long kind of response to that question, but I do agree with you. I unite what's implicit in the question that you just raised, that the existence of the African People's Solidarity Committee is absolutely testimony to the contradiction that the colonizer population has with the colonizer bourgeoisie.
Uhuru, Chairman, and thank you, Comrade Diop, for that question. And I want to go ahead and move to some other questions, because some of these questions have brought about interesting discussion in the chat. And I wanted to give you, Chairman, the opportunity to really deepen and clarify different things, because there's some confusion here. But I wanted to, while we have Director Chimurenga on, just address some questions that are related to the Make Our Black Votes Count campaign. And one is from Comrade Lynn, who asks, and also comments, I unite with the Uncommitted voter campaign. Do I need to be registered as a specific thing in order for this uncommitted vote to count? So, Director Chimurenga.
Yeah, for it to count, of course, we're talking about Democratic Party presidential primaries. Sometimes they have what they call closed primaries. And when a primary is closed, that means you can only vote in the primary of the party that you're registered with. So if you're registered as a Democrat, you can vote in that primary. So I'm not sure if you're registered in either party, but even if you can't vote, even if you're registered with some other party, maybe your relatives, your sister, maybe the person who works at the grocery store, somebody that you can send an Instagram message to help them understand that they must vote uncommitted in these upcoming primaries. Also, in the chat, I put a list of all of the primaries, and I also put a list of the ones that we're targeting that's coming up. So if you look in the chat, you'll see what dates those are happening and what states those primaries are happening.
May I mean, in terms of the list of the ones that we are targeting, I think what is meant here is that there are some states where we have a presence that is significant enough, we believe, that allow us a greater likelihood of being able to making some kind of meaningful contest here. That's part of it. But the thing is that what we are promoting here is not something that has to be limited to what the Black is Black Coalition is capable of doing. If you are in one of these places that's not targeted, if you have organizational presence, if you have the will and moxie to go out and do it where you're located in a place that's not where we don't have an organizational presence, we inspire you and call on you to do it. Start working with this. That's one thing. And I think it's really important to recognize that while we are talking about the Democratic primary, and people will raise concerns as per usual. If you don't vote for Biden, you're going to get Trump, and I'm not sure what the difference is because Biden himself ran for the Democratic nomination, Democratic primary as Trump liked, as the guy who could get the white votes that Trump was getting. That was more or less what his campaign was, and how he had worked with Stennis, who was a reactionary cracker, who was openly Ku Klux Klanishly united with our oppression. So, but the other thing about that is if we can function along with the Palestinians and other people like this, the only way we can get the on the ballot is this process. And when we get on the ballot, if in fact we can be influential enough in this process to affect what Biden and the Democratic Party will do, we also will affect what the Republican Party will do. Because the Democratic Party is in a contest with the Republican Party. And so if it's pushed to try to capture the African vote and then the Palestinian vote, et cetera, by dealing with these issues, these items, then the Republican Party, if it is serious about contending with the Democratic Party, is going to have to find a way to deal with these questions as well. In fact, the Republican Party has already initiated some approach to Black people as empty as the Democratic Party approach to Black people, but it has resulted in polling showing that the Republican Party has something like 20% in the African community. And so what I'm saying is that if we push this seriously enough with the Democratic Party, and this gets the kind of traction and attention that it needs to get, then the Republican Party will have to deal with it as well. We'll have to deal with these same issues that we're talking about because it's in a contest with the Democratic Party. And it too wants the African vote in this contest. So that's part of what it is. I think it's really important for us to understand. And I think the Palestinians and the Africans can change the whole narrative and the discussion for this election, because if without us, then it's going to be the same old white
stuff, you know. So it is absolutely necessary for us to be able to do this if possible. And then I think it's also important to say that when we kick this campaign off, it will inspire others beyond, you know, our immediate organizational capacity. And this gives us an opportunity because you can't see anything on any of these candidates. You can't see anything. You don't see anything about gentrification. You don't see anything about them, this CPS, this Child Protective Agency or services that's stealing Black babies at an extraordinary rate. That's the Democratic Party is not. This silly grinning person, Kamala Harris, does not say anything about that. About police murder in our streets, you don't hear anything about that. About the political prisoners. Yeah, free Leonard Peltier, free all the political prisoners, free Mumia. And all of these courageous men and women who put their lives on the line, they are not going to do it unless we push it on the agenda. It's not on their agenda. And this is why they want to kick us off of this process and why they kill revolutionaries before they, even as they were opening up the so-called universal suffrage, so that we and our issues would not be accessible to the broad, if you will, electorate in this country. So this is the means by which we can do this. And I'm hoping that I'm heard by people, you know, in the study, by people within our movement. I'm hoping that you share this and get the word out. Because what's critical to the success of this right now, I think, is getting the word out and saying that it's happening. This is the thing that will spark, I believe, the kind of energy that's needed. And we need to be talking about Africa, about Haiti, about all of these questions that will not get addressed unless we put them on the agenda, because these thugs in power don't intend to do it. Neither party intends to do it. Neither, you don't even hear this coming from the so-called third party. What third party candidate have you heard addressing the police murders, addressing the mass incarceration of Black people, addressing the things like what they call gentrification, which is population removal? What third party candidate is talking about the grotesque war that's being made against African people in Haiti that's more than 100 years old, that they are determined to maintain because Haiti is such an inspiration to African people, the clearest demonstration of our ability to win our freedom? You don't hear that. What political party is talking about and putting children in cages at the southern border and Leonard Peltier on the land on the indigenous people? Who is talking about that? Nobody. And so this is what we have to do. We have to make this happen. I'm hoping that we can win the kind of attention that needs to be won, and that every place people are. You see what the platform is that's put out by Comrade Chimurenga, but it doesn't have to be limited to that. It doesn't have to be limited to that. You can, and when I say that, I'm talking about we need to have press conferences everywhere we're located. And Comrade Chimurenga is going to talk about this more in the school that's happening on between the 12th, 13th, and 14th. And you need to be here for that. But you know, it's a doable thing, and we can have an extraordinarily important victory here. Anyway, that's what I would contribute to that discussion. Thank you, Comrade Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman, and Uhuru, Chair Chimurenga. And I appreciate you, Chairman, deepening that, because that was one of the other questions, you know, was around concerning I guess the strategy itself, and whether or not it was worth our time to, you know, be in the electoral arena and to care, you know, and to have this campaign, the Uncommitted Voter Campaign. So I think, you know, that was, you know, really deepened. And I think people also, you know, for further deepening of that discussion, have to participate in the electoral campaign school, and to really see the value and to see the strategy behind that. And Chairman, one of the questions that I was saying just a moment ago that has generated a lot of discussion, and it seems to, you know, be those who have, I don't know, misinterpreted or, you know, what it is that you were laying out in your overview and in the call, is the situation with regard to Trump as if you explaining what's happening to Trump as evidence of our sympathies or something like that with Trump. And you know, so I just anyway, that was what I think is the basis of a lot of confusion and discussion inside the chat today. And one person in particular, Tag5104 username in Geismar, Louisiana, you know, asked that did the chairman think that these corporations would not get on board with Trump? Chairman, a billionaire who raised $50 million last night is a victim. You know, that's their questions. And that was, again, a lot of discussion in the chat today surrounding that. So don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, I just want to say that we have no illusions about Trump. First of all, no illusions about Trump, but that Trump and Biden represent the same cesspool. There's no fundamental difference in Biden and Trump. There's this whole thing that we hear. I think it's really important because what they've done, and this is a discussion that's happened with some white people in terms of Tucker Carlson's being able to interview and defend my right to free speech, because the thing is what this guy believes in. That's me. They are saying, and Carlson, you know, rightly makes the point, and it's a point that I would make, is that this is how they come at basic democratic questions and democratic rights. They won't attack, you know, somebody who they think is ordinarily supported by you to get you to voluntarily give up your rights. They will attack somebody who they think you don't like. One reason they would attack me around the question of free speech, although it's an attack on all the people in this country with free speech, because they assume that what I say is something that is so horrendous, so bad, so that white people wouldn't like it, and therefore would negate their rights for free speech. But when you open the door to an assault on free speech, you don't just open the door on the assault of free speech for Trump. You open the door for an assault on free speech for everybody. If you unite with them attacking free speech, if you unite with them using the power of the state, as they are doing, to intervene in the political arena like this, then it's not just Trump that you open the door for. As you said, Trump is a billionaire. He can defend himself in these courts. That's why he's got the courts, you know, you ain't nobody. They step on you like a gnat. So the point is not to let them open the damn door. The point is to point out what is happening and for us to recognize it and not to be mobilized in terms of our politics by pure subjectivism, sentiments. I don't like Trump, and Trump is a horrible person, but what makes Trump worse than Biden? Tell me that. You know, who just murdered right now, you know, how many people? And, you know, we were in a discussion on yesterday with Carmen Macasa Willie Ricks, who made the point that every Black person they kill is, if you figure out every individual they kill who has a likelihood or possibility of producing 2, 3, 4 more individuals, and that person 2, 3, 4 more individuals, every Black person they kill. And so it's thousands of millions of African people they're killing every time. So the point is that we have to not allow them to use somebody that we don't like as a means to open up the door to attack somebody who we do like, to attack ourselves and whatever. So that's the thing. It's no sympathy with Trump, but there's no difference, not a dime's worth of difference between Trump and Biden, none whatsoever. And I'm saying this despite all of the liberals who like to come up, and sometimes these questions will come at director are raised by people who are trying to justify the fact they plan to vote for Biden. They plan to vote for the person who bombed my house. They plan to vote for the person and party that put another $1 million bounty on Assad Shakur. They plan to vote for the person who's killing all these Palestinians in broad daylight, who's putting people in cages in the southern border, who right now talks sending military forces into Haiti, and who's got military forces right in various places around Africa. They saying that we plan to vote for Biden And what you're saying is sympathetic to Trump. I have no sympathy for Trump, but I ain't got none for Biden either. As Malcolm said, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm not even an American, got sense enough to know it.
Uhuru.
Sure.
Uhuru, Chairman, brilliantly stated. Thank you so
I
much.
do hope that, who was that, Todd 51 what?
5104.
5104, Todd 5104, at least, I just want to explain to you the position so that in fighting against it, at least you can understand the rationale that's informing, the position. It has nothing to do with sympathy with Trump on that fact he's a billionaire. And I don't know how much money Biden has stolen, so he may or may not be a billionaire. I know he put his son, we know for sure he put his son in a situation dealing with natural gas in Ukraine, where people are dying and killing right now to become billionaires. And it's been suggested that he's got a lot of money from that too. But I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, who would think that an American politician would be a thief?
Uhuru, Chairman. Who would have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it?
So we are winding down in time, but I just really appreciate, Chairman, you really deepening that. The last question for Director Chimurenga, to just state the platform for the Make Our Black Votes Count. There are a couple of people in the chat who want to be reminded what the platform is, what we're putting out for this uncommitted voter campaign.
Okay. So, first of all, we're demanding that they drop the charges against the Uhuru Threes, which include Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville. We know the chairman is the actual primary target of that attack on. It's not just an attack on the African People's Social Support, it's an attack on the African nation. When you attack the leader of the African nation, you attack the whole nation in general. So we want to make that demand. We also want to demand that they free Leonard Peltier and all political prisoners. Chairman mentioned Mumia Abu Jamal. Free them all. And we say that we have to demand that they start in gentrification. That's pushing African people out of our communities on a daily basis. Not just African people, other colonized people as well, to create more and more white enclaves for luxury apartments and luxury condominiums. This is a real issue all over this country. So we have to be prepared to vote for ourselves, as the chairman said. And these are just some of the issues. And I also would like to say that you should definitely go to our website, makeblackvotescount.com /now. makeblackvotescount.com /now. So those are just some of the issues.
Mass incarceration, mass
incarceration of African people. Stop killing Black people on a daily basis by the police. We have to demand that they end the public policy of police containment, where Black people are constantly being surveilled and locked up by the police, and implement a public policy of economic development where we can have the kind of commerce inside the African community that we need. And of course, we want to end the genocide against the Palestinian people is being carried out by the settler colonial state of Israel. But we want to do more than that. We want to stop funding Israel, but we want those funds directed to pay for reparations to African people. So those are just some of the demands. Please go to our website, makeblackvotescount.com /now.
Uhuru, Director Chimurenga, Uhuru, Chairman. And there are questions, comrades, that just for our live audience, we will make note of and take them in a future study just because of the time on today. But I appreciate people just jumping back into action and, just excitedly, awaiting and coming back onto Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. So we've got a flood of questions. And again, we'll put those in our queue for our next Sunday study. But I just wanted to give these last 5 minutes that we have for this study to turn it over to our panelists for any other closing remarks. So Director Chimurenga, I know you just restated the platform as well as the link for people to get involved. Is there any additional closing remarks that you'd want to make? You can hear from Chair Chimurenga this coming weekend at the Black is Back Electoral Campaign School. Again, go to blackisbackcoalition.org to register. And then after Chair Chimurenga, we will turn it over to you, Chairman, for closing remarks. So comrades, please take us out.
Yeah, I would definitely ask people to email us at makeourvotescount@gmail.com. Go to our website, makeblackvotescount.com/now, and read the platform, volunteer, tell us you want to make phone calls, tell us you want to put up posters, pass out flyers. You can also call us if you want. It's 727-506-0012. 727-506-0012. makeblackvotescount.com/now. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you very much. Thank you, Comrade Director, and everybody who has come on. I really want to appreciate the fact that we know that it's been several weeks since we've done Omali Taught Me, and part of this is because we've been involved in some intense trainings with our forces in the interim that we felt was really important during this critical moment, especially with the war that's being waged against us by the United States government. And because we have so much work that we have to do practically on the ground. This is not some kind of cyber event that we're engaged in terms of with our oppressors, that the objective, of course, is to negate the colonial authority over our lives. And that's one of the reasons it's going to be so important for people to come, if you can, come to St. Louis for the school. And on the 12th, which is the Friday, we want to be able to show people the actual anti-colonial economic projects that we have initiated and that we have created in St. Louis. It gives you a better understanding of why they're attacking us. And it's the same logic that's associated with the attack in Palestine and Gaza, where people who live under settler colonial domination have initiated a process of feed, clothing, and housing themselves and governing themselves. That's the real problem that they have. That the Palestinians will have self-government and self-government by a force that works independently of the Israelis and independent of the United States government, and is working for the interests of Palestinian people. That's what we do. And St. Louis is just one of the clear examples of that. It's the most outstanding at this moment. Because it's an example that rides on the wave of resistance that came immediately from the 2014 murder of Mike Brown here in the suburb of Ferguson, and where we've organized in the wake of that and created these economic development programs against colonialism, and we built organization here as well. So we want you to see it, because even though we talk about it, you really can't understand it until you really see it concretely on the ground, the magic major transformation that we've made. And if this government were an honest government, in the sense that it was really working in the interests of African and other people, it would be applauding us. It would be throwing money at us to do stuff that they have not done, they have never done. And in fact, that they work against. They would be applauding us, but they don't. And so they're doing everything they can crush us. We want you to see this. Come to this school. Tell your friends about this school. Help to understand that if you're going to participate in the electoral process, then you have to do it in a fashion that advances the interests. You cannot be satisfied with this whole concept of a lesser of two evils. It's an evil of two lessers. When you look at Trump and Biden, you look at the Democrat and Republican, you're looking at lessers. You're not looking at the lesser of two evils. You're talking about the evil of two lessers. And that's, I want to say that to Todd, 5104. That's what we're looking at, the evil of two lessers. So I wanted to say that it's really important, the school that we have and the studies that we have an opportunity to do here, to have this discussion with you. These are discussions you won't have with anybody else. I know you can get what they characterize as analysis, and they're really smart people who talk about things. And somebody once said that philosophers have only interpreted the world in certain ways, but the point is to change it. And that's what these studies are related to, changing the world, not just explaining the world, but changing the world. Come to St. Louis and see how the world is being changed. And this represents the future. And you help to understand how the colonizer is trying to crush the future, push us back into the past of slavery and colonial domination. We reject that. And so I guess they're going to have to just get a greater supply, like they send all those weapons to occupy Palestine, to kill Palestinians, to keep them from moving forward. They're going to have to reproduce a whole bunch of flashbang grenades because Black people are going to be free. And we're not going to simply sit on our hands because you say it's illegal for us to be free. You don't have a law that's ever been written that can legalize our slavery and accept that the slave will accept that. Nat Turner didn't accept it. Denmark Vesey didn't accept it. No enslaved person has ever accepted, and neither will we. So I'm hoping that people will join in this struggle actively, consciously, and even if you can't openly support this effort, then support it secretly, support it privately, but support it. And again, come on to St. Louis. I'll see you in, how's it go? Meet me in St. Louis.
Meet me in St. Louis. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Uhuru, what a powerful, powerful study. I mean, back like we never left, and just really want to salute your profound leadership, my excitement for this school. Also really want to appreciate being joined by Chair Chimurenga on today, and for all of you for joining us and this incredible discussion that we were able to have. Really want to appreciate your participation, and also want to salute the Omali Taught Me show team who make this whole thing happen. And whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, we are glad to have you on with us. Make sure to follow the chairman on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, and Instagram. I keep saying the wrong name for Twitter. It's X now, guys. TikTok, Twitch, and Instagram, and subscribe to the Burning Spirit TV on
Think
YouTube.
Malcolm. Think Malcolm.
Yes.
Think Malcolm.
Yes. And subscribe to the Burning Spirit TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. And reminder that next weekend we will be at the 8th Electoral Campaign School. So join us next weekend by registering at blackisbackcoalition.org. And that concludes our today's study, comrades. Uhuru, we are winning. Vanguard up. Uhuru.
Relentless.